Good evening, everyone. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. A roll call, please.
Mayor Dickey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Spellich, Councilmember Friedel,
Present.
Councilmember Grosbowski,
Present.
Councilmember Magazine,
Here.
Councilmember McMahon,
Here.
Councilmember Charno.
Here.
Thank you. We'll be working on David because I know he's in the vicinity.
I'm here.
Hey, hi.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you. Perfect. We'll start with our reports by mayor, council members, and town manager. Grady?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The one thing I wanted to report to you, it's on the agenda, that we have some exciting news that after several months of planning, we've been able to purchase a webcam, and we're about ready to have it go live. We believe that's going to happen in the next week or so. I'm going to call up James Smith, our Economic Development Director, to give a report on this. This was a team effort that took a number of people, and James is going to go into this and also show you what a sampling of the webcam looks like. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
Thanks, Town Manager. We are excited to present this to you, Mayor and Council. So I want to just start, this really is just a snapshot, just an idea of where we're going. We are not fully executed in our agreement with the company. They're still building out our system, but I kind of wanted to show you some of the features and some of the things that you can expect. So first and foremost, our agreement is with a company called EarthCam. And if you go to their website, you'll see that there are prominent landmarks and cities all around the world, and of course here in North America. Councilmember Spellich, you'll be happy to know that they have a camera of the Chicago skyline. If you're missing Chicago, you can always go to their website and check that out. And Mayor Dickey, if you do want to see video of the Raiders' new stadium being built, it's right there on their website. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that they do rotate through their cities and towns and landmarks. So there's a very strong possibility that any given time we could be featured here. But as they roll us out, they've told us that we will be in this trending box that is right up at the top. So we will be in that featured trending box as soon as we get this completely rolled out. So I also wanted to show you just a kind of an idea of what some of the features are. So this is what it will look like. This is San Diego. But when it's embedded on our Experience Fountain Hills website, this is some of the capabilities that it will have. So you'll be live, but you can also go back 24 hours. So we will have this capability as well. So say you missed the fountain going off 15 minutes ago or 3 hours ago, you could click on that time and go back to that period and watch for the 15 minutes that the fountain has been going off. So there is the capability of going back and looking at the camera from a previous 24-hour period. The other aspect that's really cool here is that you can take a snapshot and send it to your friends and or post on social media. So there's this capability as well. So I think that's a really cool feature. So let's take a look at what it kind of looks like or where it will be on our website. So this is the Experience Fountain Hills website. And again, we do not have the full functioning right now, but that is live at the fountain right now as we speak. So there still are some tweaks that we're making, and then we're still trying to get the full functionality. But this is kind of, what that will look like. And then sorry, here I want to actually show you some video that we copied here. Justin,
You didn't minimize the top corner.
can you?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I'm trying to go to that video there.
Got it.
Justin, can you help me here?
I wished I could. Mike's gonna have to help you with that one.
Excuse me.
So this, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
So this is video that was shot actually at 4 o'clock today in an absolutely stunning day. So this is about 30 seconds of video that we took just to give you an example of what this is going to look like when we're live and fully functioning. And so this will be both on the Experience Fountain Hills website, and then those that are on the EarthCam website can search for Fountain Hills, and that, like I said, we will be featured when this fully starts. As Grady said, this is a total team effort. I'd like to thank Mike, has been a part of that, Amanda in our office, and Justin in Public Works. They actually installed the camera here in-house. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
James, what's really cool about this too, which we weren't really able to demonstrate, but the user from their mobile device or computer will be able to actually it's a panoramic picture, and they can actually pinpoint, they can enlarge, they could pan in, pan out, zoom in, zoom out. So they have total control of that. It's amazing technology. Right? That's really neat.
Love it. Will it be at night?
It'll be on 24/7, but obviously you won't be able to see as much. When the nights when the fountain is colored, obviously that'll be a stunning picture, I think, or video. But yes, it will be running all the time.
So when we get back to normal and have events and everything, it'll be on? Oh my gosh. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Any questions on the Zoom? Anybody have any questions? Thank you so much. That is so great. Grady, did you have any more to report?
No other reports, Mayor.
No,
I'll
thank
be
you.
later on in the meeting.
Okay. Do you have anything, Sharon? Yes?
First of all, as a nerd, I'm very excited about the EarthCam. Thank you guys for working on that. As soon as Bo gets it up there, I'll find it and I'll be sharing it everywhere. So for the past couple of weeks, we're getting ready to get a presentation on the active transportation plan from the Community Services Department. I sat in on the phone call. My husband and I actually sat in together on the last call a couple of weeks ago. Oh, it's not the same plan? Okay, never mind, scratch that. But we sat in on the phone call that Community Services had a couple of weeks ago. And of course, the mayor's state of the town. And the governor did a roundtable with the East Valley Chamber of Commerce, which was nice to sit through. I did the State of Innovation Virtual Summit with the Partnership for Economic Innovation the other day. That was very cool. I took some really good notes on that. And this morning, we had the Arizona Environmental Infrastructure Authority overview. Actually, I think that was yesterday morning. I'm running my days in together. And of course, I sat in on both of the legislative updates that the Arizona League of Towns and Cities did, and I'm kind of looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have later on about the revenue impact that corporate tax cut is going to have on us. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I, too, attended the State of the Town. It was very well done. Thank you for everybody that helped put that together. And I also attended a GPEC Health and Economy session on the 26th. And a couple of things that I picked up from that session were, one, that just in Scottsdale, right over the hill, their head and bath tax is going to be down over 30%. That's a huge hit. We also found out that there's been a lot of jobs lost in the leisure and hotel area, over 200,000 jobs in this area. And then the last thing that I want to mention is that they did, on the health side of it, they did say that the one-shot vaccine by Johnson & Johnson will be in Arizona probably by the end of February, is what they're estimating on that. I also attended a couple of ribbon-cutting ceremonies in town, one for former Mayor Jay Schlum. He has a new office down on Shea Boulevard. And then for Goal, Mark and Bridget, they opened their office here too. They're actually in 36 states, I found out. So that was kind of nice. And a plug to Justin, I was able to go out and actually watch the people striping up Sunridge Canyon, and also the sealing of the cracks in different areas of the town. They were actually up doing our neighborhood, so I actually got a first-hand view of what they were doing there, so they did a nice job. So I just thought I'd give you a little plug on that. And then I had a question for us here. Grady, I don't know if you can address this or not, but I'm wondering if there's some possibility on our town website that we could have a little more interactive area for residents to ask the council people questions. I noticed that the town of Chandler has something, and so does Tempe. And there's a lot of stuff that floats around social media that maybe we don't want to address on social media, but maybe if somebody would come to us here, we could, if there's a way to have a...
We'll definitely look into other ways of having residents reach out to council members. So you and I can talk offline too. If you've got some good examples of the ones you've seen, we can definitely explore those.
Okay, good. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Mike, do you have anything?
Well, I guess to piggyback on everyone else, I watched the State of the Town address. Well, it wasn't right at 8 o'clock, so it wasn't live, so hopefully that still counts. But I was tuning in later that day or evening, I can't remember. And I was on the Parks and Rec Master Plan call as well. I remembered which one I was on, so, I'm just saying. And was at that ribbon cutting for Mayor Jay as well. And then last week we had a Valley Metro board meeting. It was more of a work study session, just kind of a exciting budget review. So getting ready already for a much bigger budget than we have, but nothing else really newsy to report out of there. So that's it.
Thanks. Anybody on the phone?
Yes, Mayor.
Hi, Alan.
Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
Yep.
Also, I just want to tag along. The State of the Town address was excellent, but what I particularly liked last year and this year, which I hadn't seen in the past, is featuring the staff. The staff is the backbone of our town, and featuring them, what they do, letting them speak and so on, I think is very advantageous for the whole community.
Thank you, Alan. Anybody else? No? I'm glad that you brought that up. The State of the Town was virtual, hybrid. We had a nice young man sing the national anthem. I wanted to thank, of course, the sponsors, and our video was really well put together. I want to thank Bo and Mike and Grady and all the directors and our public safety guys who got all involved and wrote what they've been up to, and it just came out great. There's a lot of work to do, of course, but it was great to see the things that we had done. I think I said that, with it being such an odd year, we still accomplished a lot, and of course that's because of everybody in this room and those who help us and the community as well. I said that the State of the Town was determined, and we sure are. We're determined to move forward. And again, everybody, including the public, helps us achieve those goals. I was involved with Paradise Valley, and we're going to talk more about this with the legislator stuff, but We did a video about short-term rentals, and that should be ready in next week or so with Paradise Valley and a bunch of other mayors. I did the Parks Master Plan too. MAG Regional Council met. We had a focused effort. We're addressing homelessness. Grady knows about this because of his council meeting. And as always, concentrating on transportation, Mike, and legislation that affects local jurisdictions. Saw that the roundtable with the governor. And as Jerry was mentioning, the vaccines are continuing to roll out. I don't have a lot of news, but the Phoenix Municipal Stadium did open yesterday, and they're doing 500 about a day, but they're ready to ramp up as soon as they get the supply, right? Yep. But as you've probably been noticing, the numbers are stabilizing a little bit. We're grabbing whatever good news we can, which is the positivity rate. Everything's relative, right? If it was June and we saw 16% positivity, we would have freaked out, but now that's on the way down. So that's a really good sign. And if you need more information, the county is doing these daily emails. So just go to maricopa.gov, AZDHS, which is the Department of Health, or call that 211. And you'll get that the information really does change every day, and it's frustrating, but it's also, I think, going in the right direction. So I think that's it. Did you want to say something, Sharon? I think it looked like you were ready. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Next, we have a presentation, our monthly update by Captain Larry Kratzer of MCSO. Thank you for coming and giving us a report. I know we had to put it off a couple times.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, it's been a while since we've done the monthly update from MCSO, but glad to be back up here and provide some updates of what we've been doing. I wanted to provide an update tonight first on some of the stats from last year, being that 2020 is over. But due to just timeframes of the office generating those stats and timeframes of when the packet needs to be to you guys, I'm going to do that next month. So today what I'm going to cover is I'm going to give an update on the safety corridors in the town. Excuse me. And I think that's important. A lot of times I gauge what I do my update based on phone calls or emails from the residents in town. And we've had a few phone calls and emails about the safety corridors. So I thought it was important to, now that it's been about 2 months since they've been enacted, give a little bit of update of how that's going. So as I stated, about 2 months ago, the safety corridor signs were erected on Saguaro. And about a week later, the safety corridor signs were erected on Palisades. So in the 2 months that those corridors have been up, we've had in the town of Fountain Hills here, by deputies, 627 total traffic stops. Now, that's not just in those safety corridors, that's in all of the town, 627 total traffic stops. 253 of those, or 40% of them, have been in those corridors. So there were some people who didn't believe there has been any sort of enforcement in those areas. And I think in talking to them and reading their emails, they drive through there and they don't see a deputy actively running radar or stopping folks, so they don't believe that it's occurring. Maybe when they go through, they're not seeing any sort of enforcement activity. What I really wanted to encourage, and I think some of the things we talked about when we were determining whether or not to do the safety corridors, was that it was never going to be something that we put all of our resources in and neglected the other areas of town. It was going to be in those areas we do put more added enforcement in there because it's important for all the reasons we determined in the pedestrian and traffic safety committee. But if we put all of our resources in there, there's a lot of other areas that are equally as important to residents in town near their home or other areas. But the idea all along was that it would be strict enforcement. And so that's what we're doing. We're making sure that when we do have enforcement in those areas and we do notice violations, deputies are making those traffic stops. And they're taking into consideration all the factors that we took into when we created those safety corridors in making that determination whether or not that person is getting a citation or a warning. So I just wanted to break down some of the stats real quick on those 253 traffic stops in the corridors. 65% of those stops have been for speed, so speed-related offenses. 17% of those stops have been for non-moving violations, and those include cell phone usage, equipment violations, things of those sort. 13% of the stops have been for stop sign or red light violations. Those are lumped together. And then suspended driver's license and criminal speed violations. Deputies have cited 5 individuals for criminal speeding in those corridors, and 4 drivers have been cited for driving on suspended licenses. So we're asking deputies to continue their enforcement activity in those areas and just being diligent in those. One of the things that we got some feedback on that the public didn't like, some of the people that reached out to me, was that it's not a no discretionary. So the deputy does have the discretion whether to issue a citation or a warning. And there was some concern on that. They thought it should be 100% of the stops be a citation. Now, one of the things in looking at the data, and that I think is important to point out, is deputies a lot of times in the evenings, when we're looking for impaired drivers, will look for moving violations, things of that sort. No license plate light. Maybe they cross over the center line once or twice. So, if it was a no tolerance every time a deputy stopped someone for no license plate light in the safety corridor, they'd be getting a citation for that. And I don't think that that's what we were looking for. That wasn't the intent. We wanted them to have the ability to issue a warning if a warning was warranted. So overall, this is not an official breakdown, but in my observations and what I went through and all the data, the percentage of citation to warning was about 70 to 30, 70% citation, 30% warning. And again, a lot of those warnings were for moving the no license plate light, maybe one headlight, a lot of equipment violations. So deputies are taking that seriously in those safety corridors that council have come together and determined. And, if it's a speed-related offense, criminal speed, things of those natures that would impact the safety of the public, they're oftentimes issuing a citation to get the message across. So that's all I had for the update on the safety corridors. If there's any questions from council, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Mike?
Yeah. Oh,
Go ahead, Alan.
sorry. I confess I don't know how to do this, but somehow we ought to think about how to get the word out about the citations and how serious we are about this. I'm sure a lot of citizens have no idea, and when they see the sign, don't have a clue as to what it means. But if we could somehow get the word out as to what a safety corridor means and the number of citations, I think it might have some impact.
That's an excellent point. I just want to let the council know that, to Councilmember Magazine's point, we anticipated this and we worked very closely with the Fountain Hills Times, and we also, I believe, did a story in the Fountain Hills Insider on this and other measures that the council has instituted to improve the safety of the town. But there's certainly more that we need to do, and we'll try to find other ways of reaching people.
Well, if I may, Mayor, just to follow up. Indicating what a safety corridor is one thing. Letting people know that people are actually being cited and how many I think, can really have an impact, so they know we're serious.
Thank you.
Well taken.
Agree.
Thank you.
You bet. Mike?
No, I was just curious real quick, the criminal speeding, is it 15 miles over or?
In a residential area, there's a few different variations if it's in a residential or if it's on a normal highway, but it's usually 20 miles an hour
20,
or more over the speed limit.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Is what is the threshold for criminal speed.
Thank you. Make sure you write that down. Yeah, I know.
Asking for a friend.
For a friend, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you for, as always, being so responsive. You're always so available and accessible to us and also to the public. I mean, I appreciate all of what you and your deputies are doing. I know that you've been on alert for a lot of months for a lot of different reasons. There's just a lot of stuff going on for this year, and that it's probably difficult to separate some of what we see all around us to our little town, but you continue to keep us safe, and we really appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that.
So next, I'm not sure, I just wanted to ask, do we have a call to the public? No?
We do, it is on the agenda. I've received no cards.
Okay, thank you. our consent agenda coming, and if everybody's okay with everything, I'll take a motion.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have our regular agenda. We're just going to start out with a public hearing on development fee audit. I'll open it, and then Grady, you let me know what we're doing with this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm going to go ahead and call David Pock, our Finance Director, up to the podium, who will give you a brief background on why we are having this public hearing. And then we have our consultant, I believe, that conducted the audit on the phone, correct? Okay, so Mr. Pock?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Just to give you an idea, it was about a year ago that we did the development fee updates to the infrastructure improvement plan, the land use analysis, and then instituted those new development fees. Everybody knows that that process took around 270 days to complete, and that's all because of the Arizona revised statutes on development fees. Part of those statutes say that we have to go through an audit every 2 years. Those fees get reviewed to make sure that they were collected according to our schedule and that they were spent according to our schedule. I did want to make the point that this is not related to our financial audit that's done every year. This is done over and above that. It's looking at a very, very narrow revenue that we take in. And so that's what Kevin Burnett from Wildan is going to speak to you about. And he's on the phone, and I'll let you hear what he has to say. All right.
Thank you, David. We just get started?
Yes, Mr. Burnett.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Perfect, thanks.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you may proceed.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for taking the time to hear the presentation tonight. As David said, this is an impact fee audit or a development impact fee audit, so it's a little bit different than what we typically consider an audit to be. We're not looking at the financials specifically and that type of thing. What we're really doing here is, as David mentioned, you undertook a study to update your development impact fees. And as part of that study, you were required to project going forward for the next 10 years. What do you think your new development's going to be? How many new rooftops are you going to build? How much square footage of non-residential development is going to occur within the town? Based on those development projections, what additional facilities is the town going to need to construct or acquire in order to provide service to those new developments? So those are the main two pieces that we look at in the audit. So what we do is it's more of a check-in than an audit per se. So what we want to do is look at the projections of land use assumptions, recognizing that they were based on the available data that you had at the time. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be a mismatch between what actually occurred and what was projected, and that's fine as long as we can point to a reason as to why there might be differences between what was projected and what actually occurred. COVID being a prime example. The COVID pandemic has changed things drastically, so building may not have occurred as quickly as we had anticipated. So in our review of the land use assumptions, that's your development projections, for the 2-year period that we looked at, fiscal year 2018-19 and 19-20, the commercial development was higher than what was anticipated in the most recent report, but the developments for all other development types, land use types, was below what was projected. Again, this is not an issue. It's the first audit that we're doing under the new report, so we don't have any concerns with the fact that you're a little bit below what you were projected to be at this point in time. The second piece that we look at is what did you anticipate that you would need to acquire in order to serve that new development? So over that same time period, as I said, your development came in a little bit less than what was anticipated, but at the same time, you didn't expend any funds on new capital either. So you didn't go out and buy 5 new fire trucks, for example, to accommodate 1 new house being built. You didn't expand any roadways to accommodate the decreased development that occurred. So we feel pretty good that there's a good matching there. Again, this is in the early stages of the audit. This is the first audit that's being done. If we were to look at, as David said, it has to be done every 2 years. The development projections, the impact fee report was for 10 years. If we were looking at year 9 and you were 50% below what your development projections were, if you were 50% below on your capital expenditures, that might raise some red flags for us. But with where you're at right now in the early stages, we don't have any concerns. And in discussing it with David and other members of town staff, we think that the development is going to pick up in the future. The expenditures will be made so that we do have that appropriate matching between the new development and the facilities required to serve them. The third thing that we have to look at is the state statute is pretty explicit on what you can and cannot spend your development impact fee revenues on. So that was another piece that we looked at, just double checking. As I said, you didn't spend any money on capital infrastructure going forward. So we didn't have any issues with impact fee revenue coming in and it being spent for non-eligible items. So you're abiding by the state statutes on that front. And then the final piece that we looked at is a sampling that we do. So in that case, David provided us a list of all the building permits that were issued during the 2-year time frame that we looked at. So we just did a random sampling of those building permits just to double check if it was a single family home where you charged the single family home parks development impact fee, or did you get charged something different? If you were 1,000 square foot commercial development, was your impact fee charged based on 1,000 feet, or did somebody hit the wrong key and enter in 2,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet as the basis of the fee? And we didn't see anything on that end either. So as far as we're concerned, you're on track with where you should be. We don't have any issues with what you've done. You're in line with what the state statute requires. So as far as we're concerned, you've done everything that you're required to under the state statute. So with that overview, if you have any further questions or any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions on the audit on development fees? Anybody on the phone? Did we have any speaker cards on this? No, we did not. Okay, well, I will close the hearing. And we don't vote on this.
That is correct, Mayor. This is just for the public record that a public hearing was held and the council did have a chance to review this, but there is no action required under the state law.
Okay, and I was really glad the way, sir, you pointed out that this was, and emphasized that these are closely scrutinized. As you could see, you know, how they're collected, how they are spent, what are eligible expenditures are all very prescribed. All public funds are used for setting these fees, for doing these audits, for reevaluating them. They're all mandatory. When this happened years ago, I think we all were under the impression that the state was hoping that cities and towns would be dissuaded from going forward with our development fees, and I'm glad that the town of Fountain Hills didn't give up and that we continue to collect these very fair, legitimate, reasonable fees. I think we are responsible to our current residents, and it's only fair that new development, which has needs, you know, that needs our infrastructure and our resources, that they contribute to our parks and our roads and our public safety. So it's a kind of a grueling exercise, but it's well worth it, and we really appreciate all the work that the staff and that our consultants put into this. Thank you. Next, we have a consideration of approving a contract with Kimley Horn. Is that great?
Yeah, yes, Mayor and Council, I'm going to go ahead and have Justin Weldy provide you an overview of the Desert Vista Crosswalk project and the contract that's before you tonight on how that's going to address the engineering and design for that particular project. It's much more extensive, as you have read the staff report, than just merely a crosswalk. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Weldy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. As we plan these types of projects, especially when they're going to have a positive impact to an area right now that is underserved, we've spent, the community services director and myself and the now retired former town engineer looked at this for approximately 2 years and some change. And then last year, of course, we brought it as a capital project to the mayor and council based on our research and the needs that we discovered through our due diligence process. In this particular area, and I actually have on this screen right here, but I've not yet learned how to transfer it to those screens, an overview on Google Earth that shows the location. But what we want to do is we want to provide a safe crossing location.
Our IT administrator will help you with that. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. What we would like to do is provide a safe crossing in an area that is relatively straight and flat. And we are certainly lacking that type of terrain and environment in Fountain Hills. And I'm told that the people online cannot see the laser pointer, so I was hoping to use the cursor on it, but it's not going to work, so we'll go to the laser pointer. The area that we are discussing the crossing at is on Saguaro at Tower Drive. This will be the main crossing here. The area to be served is Desert Vista Dog Park. That is between Tower Drive, Desert Vista, and the lower portion, which is Tioga.
Mr. Weldy, just for clarification, it's not just the dog park, but it's the skate park and the entire the soccer fields, and it's the entire park and all the amenities there.
You are correct, and thank you for that correction. It's a dog park, and it has several other amenities there, including soccer and walking and other activities. For humans. Part of this project will also include a sidewalk on the north side of Saguaro, and that sidewalk for right now will run between Quinto and Bond Drive. It should also be noted, and this is very important, at this location on Saguaro at Tower Drive, there will be a hybrid flashing beacon installed. If you're heading southbound on Saguaro, there will be two indications, one on the left and one on the right. In the median, and at this location on Saguaro, there is a nice wide median. There will be a safe haven there and an opportunity for the pedestrians to not only rest in that safe haven, but also call the controller an additional time, push a button, and the lights will start flashing again. There will then be two lights for northbound, one on the left and one on the right. After they cross Saguaro, there is a second haven, and this is rare and very important. Between the service road and Saguaro is another nice wide median, so they will have an opportunity to gain their bearing at that location, look both left and right, and ensure that there's no traffic. And then there's a very short crossing across the service road of about 30 feet. So there will not be any flashing beacons on that. The end result is we will have a safe crossing in a safe location that will serve the neighborhoods south of Saguaro at this location. And as we build out as part of our master plan and make this a more walkable and more pedestrian-friendly town, we will add sidewalks throughout those neighborhoods, and those will be coming up in the future for consideration by the mayor and council to approve. excuse me, on the south side of Saguaro, and I'm just going to spend a moment there to discuss some of that sidewalk. We have a relatively steep slope on that side. We also have some existing water meters and some mature landscaping. What we would like to do to the best of our ability is minimize the disturbance to the landscaping that the adjacent homeowners have planted and cared for. When and practical and possible, we'll go around that. Otherwise, it will be basically attached to the back of curb, and at the water meters will meander. As a result of this meandering and this steep slope, there will be areas with a retaining wall behind the sidewalk, in some locations at approximately 36 inches high. That is an estimate based on our observations. We have the survey provided tonight that the contract is approved. Then the design engineer will then have that information and the design will take off, and we'll have a better idea of exactly where the sidewalk will lie, what changes need to be made, and the height of any retaining walls that may be necessary in that area. I would like to add that last year and the year before that, so 2019, while we were looking for options for sidewalk construction, we discovered a Department of Transportation Texas detail for various sizes or widths of sidewalks that had a retaining wall in varying heights attached to that. The now retired town engineer and the current town engineer had an opportunity to review that, make some comments. We were able to utilize that to construct the sidewalk on Fountain Hills Boulevard between the Botanical Garden and Palomino on the west side of the road. So oftentimes when people hear retaining walls, they think of large ones. In this case, that one is only about 12 to 18 inches tall, but that is an excellent application of that type of detail that has benefited the town, and it was also substantially less expensive than the traditional method of constructing a retaining wall and then placing a sidewalk in front of it. With that said, I am willing to answer any questions that I possibly can and provide additional information.
Thank you. Any questions, Jerry?
When do you anticipate the project starting and finishing?
Can you hear me?
Just one second, Peggy. We'll get right to you.
Madam Mayor, Council Member, the intent, if it's approved tonight, we will send them a notice of proceed, or rather I will when the contract is executed later this week. We are going to move right to the 90% plans. We would like to say, and I'm not certain of this, that it will be ready for construction by the middle of June, by the middle of May, and completed by June 30th.
Thank you. Councilwoman McMahon?
Good evening, everybody. I have a couple questions regarding the crosswalk. That is a street, even though it is, there's a speed limit on it. I'm concerned about the flashing lights. When you come around the bend, are there going to be any flashing lights in advance of the crosswalk in both directions to warn cars that they're coming up on a crosswalk? Or are the flashing lights just going to be at the crosswalk?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, we currently do not have any advanced flashing lights planned for this project, but that may become a necessity as the design moves forward. Oftentimes, and this is required by law, there will be an advanced sign that shows a crosswalk indication, a person walking, and also the light indication.
And also, what about coming from the park side in the service road? Is there going to be I know you said there's not going to be flashing lights, but will there be a crosswalk as well? Are there going to be any warning signs for the pedestrians from either side that are going to cross the street to be careful and cautious and look for cars?
Madam Mayor, indeed, the crosswalk will be marked on the service road in white, thermoplastic. It will look very similar, well, identical to the ones that are on the avenue or adjacent to the high school. There will also be advanced warning signs notifying people that they're approaching a crosswalk, and at the crosswalk there will also be signage.
Justin, you want to also talk about the safety zones in the medians so that people, they don't have to make it all at one time. They can get to the middle because it is a very wide stretch of road.
Absolutely. The town manager just alluded to the fact that on the south side of Saguaro, there will be a large curb opening ramp that will allow for someone to queue there and look both direction and then walk across 2 lanes of traffic and then be in the center median of Saguaro. That is the safe haven. And the safe haven there is relatively large. I think it's about 12 feet across. They will have an opportunity to take a break if necessary or gain their bearing, look both directions prior to crossing the next 2 lanes. And again, and we're in a unique situation here, we then have a second safe haven. Between Saguaro and the service road, there is an additional 10-foot wide median that will allow the pedestrians to again stop, get control of their smaller children or get back on their bicycle, whatever their mode of transportation is, and then cross the service road. It should also be noted that the accessible route on Tower between the service road and the park will be brought up to the current Department of Justice standards, and they're the ones that regulate the ADA accessibility. So the curb opening ramp on the corner of Tower and the service road will be modified to meet the new standards, and also the alley crossing, which joins the parking lot of the park, will also be modified at that location.
Justin, do you want to also kind of explain, and this map is really good, you know, with the Google Maps, why Desert Vista wasn't chosen because of the nature of the curve and linear nature of Saguaro and the fact that you've got some sightline issues as you're coming across the bend in the road. Do you want to kind of explain that?
The Desert Vista location on Saguaro has a few challenges. One of them is, while the road is relatively flat, the approach from each direction for north and southbound traffic, there is horizontal curvature with a raised median that is landscaped, creating line of sight issues. And also at that location, we have to contend with turning movements. We have northbound right turning movements off of Saguaro and onto Desert Vista, and almost immediately after that right turn is mostly executed, people make a left turn onto the service road to continue northbound onto the service road. And that's a little bit challenging there. I will point that out with this pointer here. Right here, when people make that right turn, they almost immediately make a left turn, so they kind of shoot across it diagonally there. And that creates challenges for pedestrians. It should also be noted that it doesn't really tie into the neighborhood that we're attempting to service with the first phase, and it puts us kind of mid-block on it. This was just not an ideal location just for the line of sight issues with it being on a curve, and also the turning movements, not only onto and off of Saguaro, but onto and off of the service road.
Thank you. Anything else, Peggy? Any other questions?
I
Any
have.
questions?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So Justin, once you cross the service road, I know you said you were going to do a handicap ramp, so is there sidewalks existing there on Tower next to the veterinary office? Yeah?
Madam Mayor, council member, indeed, there are currently sidewalks on Tower all the way from the service road down to Tioga, and that sidewalk is on the east side of the road and goes all the way down to Tioga. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify this curb opening ramp here to meet the current standards. We'll also modify this alley crossing right here to meet the current standards.
Okay, and then with the flashing beacons, is that kind of the new standard? I mean, we don't need any yellow flashing lights there, just the beacons are sufficient in terms of...
Council member, these flashing lights are yellow. So the hybrid beacon that I reference is a solar rectangular rapid flashing beacon. And it should also be noted at this location, there will also be a street light luminaire. So that is a little bit taller post with an arm that hangs off, so we can illuminate this crossing as well. So not only will we have the dual strobe lights on either side, but it'll also be lit at night.
And then reflectors in the crosswalk itself as well.
In fact, and the town manager brought up a good point, The thermoplastic used is reflective, and it will be very reflective. And where we can, we'll put in RPMs to also identify it, which is a raised pavement marker. Let me make that clear.
I know on the next agenda item, there's a couple of slides in discussion about Hawk systems. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I know, motorists obviously need to stop for pedestrians, but I don't know, could this be, retrofitted or engineered for future Hawk conversion if we feel it's needed, or are they too expensive, or what are your thoughts on that in terms of a red light crossing?
Hawk signals, council member, Hawk signals in the appropriate location are a good application for that. In this particular case, the cost to purchase and install this hybrid flashing beacon system is a little bit more than $20,000. It's also consistent with the other two locations we have in town in regards to manufacturing and software. Fire Station 2, north of Shea on Fountain Hills Boulevard, the crossing near the high school at Hampstead. A Hawk signal is a few $100,000. And certainly in the future, should staff be given direction through the town manager to retrofit this for a Hawk signal, we can look at that. It is my opinion, and if the town engineer were here, she would also share in her opinion that this flashing hybrid system is the best suited for this location.
Are you sticking around for the next item?
I will not be here for that, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. We had a couple of questions and discussions about cost and, going ahead with this. Would it interfere with our plans for doing, the paving that we need to do? And you had indicated that this would not be, this was a different project, which, we go through this when we do our SIP and everything, and then we said we have the funds set aside for something. So I was told that this would not be something that would interfere with our plans for the roads, and that's correct, right?
That is correct, Madam Mayor.
And then we talked a little bit about, so some stuff might seem random, but Grady and I just want to make sure that we get it, what are we talking about? Like it being a puzzle. So, this is one little part of the puzzle of making Fountain Hills more walkable and bike, and just, that is the next item that we're going to talk about. But it really is part of that. And so, I started to question it a little bit myself, but I thought, well, this is exactly what we're trying to do here. And if we can make it safer, and we should really think about all the miles between Shea and El Lago, that there really isn't a place to cross. So I'm supportive of this project, and I wondered if we had any speaker cards on this. No, we do not. So does anybody have anything else they would like to say, or would someone like to make a motion?
Once we get the final design and it comes back after bidding, we have the money in the bank, more or less, right, as far as capital?
That's correct. A budgeted project, correct?
That is correct. The funding for the design and the construction was adopted as part of this year's capital project.
But to the council member's point, what we can do and we should do is we should come back to the council with the final design, and you guys can see that. And if you have, after you've reviewed the capital budget, initial one that's at the council retreat, and you feel very strongly that the Hawk system, for instance, might be the desirable way to go, then that could be something council could consider. I mean, we have additional dollars to put into that improvement.
Absolutely.
So if this project is $300,000, then that would be the difference between what you said the beacon would be and then adding to it. But at this point, we're looking at, so would the 300 or 400,000, or how would you say the 85,000 fits into that? Is that part of that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, the 85,000 is part of the overall budget. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that we had budgeted either $320,000 or $280,000 based on our best practices when we were putting this together. And so the design money will come out of that. But based also on our existing contracts that we utilize for flat work and retaining walls, pavement markings, and hybrid flashing beacons, we're still thinking that the entire project turnkey is going to come in just under $300,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, we've had this on the radar, and also we had residents come to us about this issue.
That's absolutely correct. We realized that there was a deficiency here some time ago, but residents within the last 2 years identified that they have families and they have no real way of crossing safely to get to the Desert Vista Park. So this is one of the things that we heard, we listened to the residents, and this is something that we created a project as a result of that input.
Thank you.
And if I may, Madam Mayor, this sidewalk will also connect this neighborhood via Tower to Tioga, to Panorama, where we then would have an uninterrupted walking path to Fountain Park and also the Overlook Trail and the amenities of that area for that matter.
Thank you. Yes.
I just wanted to point out that I think this is the exact thing that was brought to CSAC, and CSAC approved it as we see it here. Rachel can probably give us a confirmation, but I think that this is what they saw and they approved.
Thank you. What she said. So will somebody like to make a motion, please?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move approval, professional services agreement 2021-32 with Kimley Horn Associates in the amount of $85,901.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks so much for your work.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, speaking of the active transportation plan, that is our next item.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, our Development Services Director, John Wesley, will be giving you a update and report on the active transportation plan, and he will be trying to seek your input and feedback on the plan. Again, I think that the way that I would suggest that you look at the active transportation plan is to see it as a vision for our community being a balanced community in terms of having multimodal means of transportation. That means pedestrian access in our community, bicycles and also automobiles and maybe other means, skateboards and scooters and other things. So anyways, John is going to go ahead and give you a report on this, and I believe you also have the consultants here as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Wesley.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, Mayor, and Council. Good evening. So the previous discussion was a good lead-in. I think you've had focused on a very specific active transportation network plan issue. We're going to back up and look at the bigger picture issue for the entire town. The Maricopa Association of Governments provided the town with a grant to do this project, and through that grant hired J2 Engineering and Environmental Design as our consultant to work on this project. They have extensive history in doing these types of plans in other cities throughout the valley. The plan, as Mr. Miller alluded to, will look at all active transportation items, non-vehicular transportation items, primarily sidewalks, bike paths, and those types of issues throughout the town. Help us evaluate where we are and look at what we need to do to improve that network so it's efficient and safe for residents of the town. We've started this process back in September with a Zoom public meeting. We've held 2 of those now. The consultant's been busy looking at other documents and surveying the town, going out and seeing various examples of our network, taking pictures, becoming very familiar with our current system, and starting to develop some ideas, recommendations, and thoughts that will form a plan that we hope to bring back to council later this spring or early summer before you go on your break. And so it's an important time in this process that you review the work that's been done and provide us with feedback on your thoughts. Are we hitting the mark? Are there things we're missing? What are your priorities? as we look at the priority sidewalks that we've started to identify, are we going down the right path of the changes you would like to see made in that? So here in just a second, I'll turn the presentation over to Aaron Allen of J2 so he can go through that with you. We're not looking for specific decisions tonight, but definite feedback from the council to let us know if there are changes that we need to make before we proceed and finalize a draft plan to get out for public review and comment. So with that, Aaron, hopefully you are there and ready to go.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can everyone see that screen okay?
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
Okay. So just want to give you an update of where we're at in the process of the ATP. So we've done our information gathering phase, where we've gone out and gathered and reviewed a lot of documents and things like that. We've gone out and we've done some inventory and analysis, which is walking some of the areas of the town, reaching out to the public, doing some public meetings. And then what we've done so far is we've written a draft active transportation plan, which has been submitted to town staff. And we have recently just received comments back on that. And we're beginning to address some of those comments that we've received from staff. And then towards the summer of 2021 is when we anticipate to wrap up the overall active transportation plan. So some of the public involvement, as mentioned, we had our first meeting back in September, and that was a Zoom meeting. We had good attendance at that. At that time, we also developed a survey to reach out to the public to gain input from their perspective on what active transportation means to them, things that they like to do, where they are trying to go. So that survey was up for about 3 weeks, and we also tabulated and posted those results on the town's website as well. Some of the tabulated information, turned into pie charts. This is kind of just some examples that we did from the summary of the walking. One of the things that was kind of identified by the public is that walking is a big focus of the public. A lot of people use that just for recreation, for exercise, and to get to areas.
Mayor, excuse me.
The biggest areas that they get to is focused on getting to the downtown.
Excuse me, Councilman has a question. Councilman?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did this survey go out to all? I didn't hear this. Go out to all citizens?
It was posted on the town's website.
And we only got, from what I saw, 53 respondents. Is that correct?
We had around 53 respondents.
That is not good. I just want to suggest to staff that in the future, we try to find other ways to get surveys like this to the public, because clearly just having people go to the website isn't working.
Oh, Grady, do you want to address that?
Yes, Councilmember Magazine, that's a very good point. This was not designed really to be what I would call a statistically valid type survey. So all it was trying to do was trying to get input and feedback, and it appears to me it would be better described as a stakeholder type of feedback that we receive. So people that have been contacting the town about a number of things that they're looking for improvements, a lot of those type of people participated in this. So it wasn't a survey in the sense of like a citizen survey that we would traditionally conduct and have a 95% confidence level, that kind of situation. But it was, to your point, it would have been nice to have more people, absolutely. And we will definitely strive in the future to try to get more input. But I think what you're going to see going through the rest of this presentation, that we had some outstanding input from those 53 people.
And that said, it wasn't just up at our website that you had to go looking for it. I mean, I know Sharon, and we put it all over online. I emailed it to several people or groups of people that had expressed interest in
Our
the
local
past.
newspaper did an excellent job of getting the word out as well.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Some of the other things that kind of came out of the results of the survey was that, closure of sidewalk gaps was important, and that identifying safe routes to schools and some of the town park and recreational facilities was of high importance, and also just general pedestrian safety at crossing areas was a concern. Again, so similar questions were asked of people that were cyclists. So where are you cycling to? What are concerns when you cycle? So again, it was to kind of keep some of the major bike routes in the town that are there. People really enjoy utilizing those. But it was some consistency for how the bicycle routes are signed, striped, and then also just educational outreach to drivers about how to share the roads with bicycles was a concern that was raised. So here's some of the additional public involvement that's kind of gone on. The items in gray are meetings that have occurred, and items in black are ones that are going to be upcoming. So there was a joint committee meeting with the Planning and Zoning and Community Services. We had a booth at the Festival of the Arts, Fine Arts and Crafts for several days, where people came up to the booth and provided input on some of the exhibits. We also then had a second public meeting on December 9th. And then there's actually going to be a plan for a third public meeting sometime this spring and summer. We are currently here for the February council meeting. We'll also then have a second council meeting to apprise you of kind of the updates from the last public meeting and also give an update on the final plan status. And then there will also be another joint meeting with Planning and Zoning and Community Services upcoming as well. So some of the background research that has occurred, looking at the general plan, some of the transit feasibility studies, identifying both public and charter schools within the town, also looking at the current parks in the town and how people are connecting to those. And then we are also identified some of 3 potential new town park locations that are being looked at by the town. And so those are referenced in the town as well. And there was also a safety review done looking at collisions that were involved bicycles and pedestrians. So here you can see the map of looking at some of those bicycle and pedestrian accidents. This information was gathered from ADOT, and you can see the ones in yellow are pedestrians, the ones in green are bikes. We did go out and look at some of these areas. Some of the areas that accidents were occurring were usually due to changes in grade or curvatures of the road to where perhaps like distances was not feasible and just good. The other areas was, you can see down by like the Fountain Lake, that there is probably just due to a lot more congestion and use.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, Councilman.
I'm sorry, was there?
Do you want us to hold questions or should we ask as we go?
No, go ahead and ask.
On the previous slide, that just strikes me as a lot of accidents, especially fatalities. Do we have any comparison with previous years?
This is accumulation data of 2014.
Oh, I see. 2014-18. I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So some of the things that we're starting to look at is basically the big picture items of how do you phase all these improvements. And it's broken down into some sidewalk mapping and then also bicycle routes. So back in 2006, the town actually started developing a long-range sidewalk plan, and it's breaking priority areas into 5 years, 10 years, 15, and kind of beyond that 15-year period. And so with building upon the current town plan and then hearing input from the stakeholders and the public, we started to kind of refine the sidewalk plan. And what it does is it's really starting to focus on the improving the areas around the downtown, as that was one of the biggest things that we heard of where improvements needed to be made. And then looking at connections to some of the safe routes to school and some of the recreational facilities, and then kind of moving out from there in the east and west connections to the different town minor arterial. Very similar, the bicycle plan took that same approach, looking at where there's existing facilities and then proposed facilities in order to connect those. And so then again, it seems to be that the most priority is going to be on Fountain Hills Boulevard, and then kind of connecting to some of the existing bikeways throughout the town. As far as also some of the bicycle improvements, there's making suggestions of looking at different intersection improvements for striping. Here are different examples of how these are new striping developments that are becoming more and more common throughout the United States to identify where bicycles go when they're in the intersections, where bicycles go when you perhaps cross on-street parking. So these are just suggestions that the town can begin to review and see if any of these are right for the town to implement. Also, suggestions of evaluating, which you kind of just heard about, some rectangular rapid flashing beacons, which is the images up at the top, or perhaps hawk signals, which is the image in the middle bottom, or pedestrian refuge islands, which is the image on the far right. So these are things that on a case-by-case basis can be tools in the toolbox for the town to do when they get into that site-specific design, which we kind of heard about in the previous presentation. These are tools that can be implemented to make those pedestrian crossings safer and give that driver feedback awareness that they are coming up on pedestrian crossings. There was also the suggestion from the public about ways to educate the public. So we made the suggestion there are several handouts available from ADOT. These could be readily distributed at town festivals. They could be put in the library or at town hall, perhaps incorporated to other educational programs such as driver programs to help just educate not only bicyclists, but pedestrians and automobile drivers on how to share the road with each other. One of the other things is that we started to look at how some of these things could be implemented. So the current roadways within the town have, I think when they were initially designed and built, were designed and built for much higher capacity than what is currently being used or what is forecasted in the future. This kind of gives an opportunity that there's a lot of right-of-way that can be utilized and repurposed to incorporate some of these active transportation items. So here, this is a graphic that shows the existing condition on the upper left, and on the lower right is a graphical representation of how you can incorporate some sidewalks within the town right-of-way and also not impacting the adjacent edge of right-of-way. So what this actually would do is actually move in curb lines, so you would kind of right-size the road, if you will, so some lane sizes would get reduced, but you can still incorporate sidewalks on both sides, designated bike lanes, but you're also staying within the existing town right-of-way and not impacting those edges. So one of the things that you heard about before is that all these projects definitely have costs. So we're also developing these cost templates that will allow the town to start to identify if a project is upcoming, that they can plug in some of the yellow items. That will actually help them generate a potential cost of construction, and it also has design and things like that in there. So if the opportunity arises that maybe the town can plan for a future CIP project, or if there's an upcoming grant, the town then can have this as a tool in their toolkit to kind of generate some of those potential costs. This is just taking a look here at one of the town collectors. So again, you see the existing image up on the left. The lower image on the right is basically if you were to bump out a sidewalk and new curb and gutter into the existing roadway. Relook at some of the striping, but it allows you to get dedicated on-site facilities for bicycles. It allows for that pedestrian sidewalks, but then also accommodates the traffic and maintains the current traffic levels. And again, each of these different scenarios, we tried to come up with some of these cost template tools. Here, this is looking at an example of a local street. So the image again on the left is the existing, the image on the right is a proposed. So again, here it's coming into the roadway. However, at some of these local streets, there is not enough room to get a designated bike lane, but there is the opportunity for what they call a sharrow. So this is adding additional striping to the roadway that identifies that automobiles need to share the car or share the road with bicycles, but it also has that designated, so you're getting that driver feedback that, hey, there could be bikes in my lane sharing the road with me. Also does not impact the edge of the right-of-way or the existing landscape because it does come into the existing pavement. And again, cost templates generated for this type of potential development. And we do acknowledge that there's going to be some areas throughout the town where it just won't be feasible to adjust and bring the roadway in. So this is a potential look, as you see on the upper left, the existing condition. And then you see the proposed condition on the right where new sidewalk is being added at backup curb. This will have impact to, the existing residents would have, mailboxes might have to be moved, landscaping might have to be moved. In some scenarios, retaining walls may have to be added. But again, all this work would be still contained within existing town right-of-way, but you're able to incorporate some of those safer walking conditions. And then again, just another separate cost template, trying to capture some of those things like retaining walls and ramps and handrails and things that may or may not be required, plus the cost of potential right-of-way or landscaping modifications. Lastly, one of the things that was asked for in some of the public input was plant material that could be used in these right-of-way zones adjacent to sidewalks and multimodal facilities. So they were asked for it to be thorn lists. So here's a list of plants that was generated that can be reviewed. They meet the Arizona Department of Water Resources list, so they can be planted within a right-of-way. They don't have thorns. And so obviously, and they fit in with some of the existing plant material that's within the town currently. Obviously, plant material definitely has to be site-specific considerations to make sure that it doesn't obstruct site view lines and things like that. But that was kind of the last item that was kind of currently asked for as a part of that active transportation plan. So with that, I can open it up to if there's any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from up here on the dais? Mike?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Aaron, on some of those proposals where you're moving or putting the sidewalk basically on existing roadway, right now there's probably mailboxes that are right along the curb, so I guess we'd have to move those the other way, right, toward the curbing, the new curbing?
Potentially on some of the, yes, where we're moving curb lines in, potentially mailboxes would have to move in. Sometimes in other communities, they've gone away from the individual mailboxes and started to look at doing some of the group mailboxes. That gets into some of that site-specific and working with the post office and some of those existing constraints. But yes, there could be definitely impacts to existing mailboxes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure the group mailboxes would work in certain neighborhoods, but I know some of the subdivisions out here already have them. But anyway, I mean, as far as taking some of our wider streets and narrowing them down and using existing pavement area, I mean, to me, that's an excellent proposal. I'm all in favor of doing that where and when we can. I know it's none of this is an inexpensive proposition, but this is a long-term plan we're looking at, and certainly would be in favor of doing that. That would just help a number of issues. I mean, a lot of people forget, you know, when Fountain Hills was platted originally, you know, McCulloch was envisioning 75,000 people and a lot more multifamily projects out here. So that's why we have, you know, Palomino and Kingstree and El Lago, some of these streets that are just, you know, it's not how we would do them today. So anything we can do to narrow those, improve traffic safety as well as pedestrian bicycle safety, I'm all in favor of. And bicyclists, I mean, it's a growing trend out here in Fountain Hills even before the pandemic. I mean, we have 2 bike shops and have a lot of bicyclists out here. So, and I know Councilwoman Grabowski, she did a huge thing at the leadership program about the difference between bike routes and bike lanes and all kinds of stuff. So anything we can do to enhance the safety for, you know, mountain bikers as well as road bikers, that's a good thing in my mind. Gosh, there was one other thing, but maybe I'll come back to it.
Yeah, sure, of course. Do you have anything, Sharon?
No, I mean, you know, I applaud everything that we heard here. I think it's fabulous. I would love to be able to share more road biking with my friends out there because we've got great opportunities here in town and we do have some pretty wide roads.
That's true. I was talking to Grady about that. I should have looked a little closer to this presentation because and it's interesting because that came up when we talked about having so much pavement to take care of. So this would, you know, even though it's an initial expense, eventually you have a little bit less road to maintain. Did we have any speaker cards? No? Anybody on the phone want to say anything?
Yes, Mayor. Potential political problems wherein people don't know where the right-of-way is and they get upset that you're taking their property. As a matter of fact, my wife wanted sidewalks in a former neighborhood, talked to a couple of people, and they got all upset. You're not taking my property. I don't know how you deal with that. I think the roads that are wider and can be narrower obviously makes it a lot easier. But other roadways where you have to go into the right-of-way closer to homes can be a real problem.
Yeah, we
Mayor,
did hear
Council,
that. Grady,
that's-
yes.
That's an absolutely good point, because people really don't realize that the right-of-way is typically from the street and into their yard. What they consider their yard where they've landscaped is sometimes can be 6 to 8 feet. And so there's also people that have actually put their mailboxes right in the right-of-way because it's as close as the mail carriers can get without actually, you know, being in the street. So those are all considerations we have to look at. My take on this is a long-term plan, and I'd like to, as we start trying to go after grants, this active transportation plan, getting this done, this along with the safe routes to schools, is really going to give us what I would call, I hate to use the term ammunition, but it's really going to give us really the resources that we can demonstrate that we're really serious about this, and we can apply and receive MAG dollars or Maricopa Association of Government dollars that will help us pay for these sidewalk improvements. It won't cover everything, but again, keep in mind that this is a 20 probably year plan that we need to focus on, and it's not going to be done overnight. And I think what we'd like to do is probably try to take on the low-hanging fruit. So once other neighbors start seeing how these improvements are looking in other neighborhoods, that they're going to say, me too, when are you going to do mine? And so we think that that's kind of the strategy, kind of do the ones that are the no-brainers, the ones that are really going to add value to the communities. I think Palomino's a really good example, and you saw it in the slides. I think the other example that you saw is, I always get the name, is it Brook? Glenbrook, thank you, is another wide, long stretch of road. And we've already identified before we went into the active transportation plan that that would be one area that we try to get a sidewalks to narrow the streets down in there. So in any case, I think this is really a great plan. We're really seeking your input. So this is the opportunity, if you had any other ideas that were missed or any other thoughts. The consultant and John are all here. They've got all ears. And as you saw with the schedule, we have a couple more steps before we come back for a final adoption of this plan.
I like the plan, and as a cyclist in this town, I applaud it. But again, share the road and the right-of-way, it's an educational process for the whole town to go through. So, like you said, it's a long-term plan, so we have a lot of educating to do. And maybe we have a share the road week or day or month or whatever, and we really blast that out and let people know about it, you know. And it's not just share the road for cyclists, it's pedestrians, joggers, cyclists, you know, the whole 9 yards. So again, it's an educational process to get people used to it and then educating them on the right-of-way process too, so.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I know we've even gotten letters, complaints about, and I know you follow all the rules, Jerry, but bicyclists, you know, they're supposed to stop and, you know, obey all the traffic laws too, so it kind of works both ways. I mean, the education is applies to everybody, and I was just thinking pedestrian-wise, and I don't know if it's part of this or if it's for a traffic and safety committee, and I know Justin had brought before us earlier, and it kind of got turned down at the time, but the Safeway area and the pedestrians, you know, crossing over from the condos there, I mean, I still see that every time I go to Safeway, you know, a couple times a week or whatever. I still think that's an issue that somehow we need to address, and I see it also quite a bit, people cutting across Palisades by Bashes, like I think it's Lamont or whatever that street is right there. I mean, I see that all the time too, and you know, people don't walk all the way down to the corner. So you know, I know studies aren't always the favorite thing, and you know, I don't know if it's part of this or if it's a future CIP thing, but I just think from a pedestrian standpoint, those are two areas we still need to look at.
Thank you, Mike. I definitely agree with that. The Safeway one, all those condos over there, for sure. Somebody asked me, a resident had asked me about the opportunity to share bikes, like, you know, how they do in the city and stuff like that. So Grady, I had mentioned that to you, and I agree with you that it seems more suited to more of an urban area, but I wondered if Aaron could tell us a little bit about that, or if that's something that you've ever seen be successful in a town like ours. I know that some of the other cities have had some issues with you know, leaving the bikes everywhere, or sometimes they have scooters and they're leaving them other places too. But I said I would mention it because it's something that some people were asking about.
Mayor, I believe Aaron's probably still on the line. I don't know if he'll have a comment on that or not. It's really kind of tangential to the active transportation plan, but it is an important component overall to the town and the services we might want to be able to provide our citizens and our visitors to have, you know, the bike share approach, particularly in more downtown kind of urban area. The little bit I have seen them and studied them, they've kind of come and gone in terms of their effectiveness. They haven't really, from what I've seen, been as successful as we've wanted to see in the valley. I think it is partially due to our density of users for those things, and they do cause some of the issues that you've mentioned. People take them and leave them in odd places. So it may be worth, you know, exploring as we go forward as an item, particularly kind of in the downtown area. Again, I'm not sure it really fits in with this plan per se.
since this is kind of pie in the sky and let's make a wish kind of thing, I really like that a lot of the cities and towns are going to the greening of the bike lanes. I realize that's a bigger expense, but in an effort for better education for bikers and pedestrians and the cars, it does help to differentiate. Because a lot of times, like in our town, we just don't sign it very well. There might be a sign at the beginning, but there's nothing on the road in most of our spots. So the green would make it very obvious to those of us on the bike as well as those of us in the car to help differentiate. Really good educational opportunity.
That's a good point. And John, it was great seeing that in the slides because I've only started seeing that the last year or two across the valley, and I was in New York City probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was extensive in the city there.
Yeah, they've been doing it on the East Coast for a while. It really does make a difference because it draws your eye to it. And I think the perfect example is right here by Town Hall, where they made it a point to now there's a parking and a bike lane. If that bike lane was green, because I know people don't know, I've actually had people question me what it is. If that lane was green, then people that parked would realize that maybe they need to peek through their side view mirror before they open that car door into my bike as I go sailing by.
Thank you. That makes sense. So we also talked a little bit about the urban trails. I know that some of them are basically just the sidewalk, but I think that is also a component that we like, the idea of that. And I don't know if there's some that intertwine with some more hiking type of areas, but that's also something that I think that folks like around here. And also you mentioned the schools, Grady, and the safe routes to schools, and that we did get a grant, and that this fits in very well with that too. You know, the whole healthy, the healthy cities, the walking, the community, the safe walking, and that's something that I know is important to Alan. So I think that all this fits really well in a big picture way, and some of it I think with grants and having a plan is kind of the first step. So I think really appreciate you bringing this forward to us, and kind of like with the parks one, I think it's all moving in the right direction and gives us a plan that going forward. So if anybody has any other questions, we are not voting or doing anything with this at this time.
Yeah, Mayor, we'll just appreciate the comments that have been made. If you get away from here and think, oh, I wish I would have mentioned that, or I looked at it a little closer and here's a comment, I'd rather see this be a priority instead of that, please let us know as we are working on getting the draft plan out ready for public review, probably within about the next month. We hope to have that out. So now is a great time to give us any of those comments that you have. And you mentioned this just a second ago, but I'll mention it again. We have been working with a consultant also on the Parks Master Plan, had some communications back and forth to make sure the two are working together.
We really appreciate that. Thank you for presenting tonight, Aaron. And if there's nothing else, we'll move on to our last item, which is the legislative agenda, the Arizona Cities and Towns, the League. And Grady, you're going to give us a little explanation of, we just barrel forward here, but we have new members, and let's kind of explain this a little bit.
So thank you, Mayor. Good entree into this agenda item. So from this point forward, going through the end of the legislative session, we're going to have this agenda item on there where we're going to be seeking council consideration and possible direction on bills that are before the legislature. The reason for that is a number of bills actually have impacts. Some are bills that through the League of Cities and Towns that we try to work through. There's a few of you that are serving on some of these committees with the League, and so a number of those policy committees actually develop try to find sponsors of bills that will take some of those issues forward. As an example, in the past, the short-term rental issue that we've talked about here, the last 3 to 4 years, there's been bills in the last few years to try to get a little bit better control of that situation. But the idea is that this gives the council a chance to discuss these items and then provide staff direction so we can get letters of support or opposition to any of the bills that you feel very strongly about. And also, I want to let you know that each of you, as individual members of the council, can also go on, it's called ALICE, it's Arizona Legislative Information Systems, and you can get registered, and then you can also individually register your, basically in favor or opposition, or I should say in support or opposition of any of the bills. But make sure that you do it as an individual. We will take your input at these official meetings and register, since we are considered the registered lobbyists on behalf of the town, and we will then provide that input to the legislature or to members of the committees that are reviewing these bills. So, so with that, Mayor, if you don't mind, there's a few that I'd like to share with you. And by the way, this is your opportunity. If you've reviewed the legislative bulletin, which is attached to the packet, if there's anything that you want to bring up, we encourage you to always look at the bulletins, because those bills are ones that really have either positive or negative impacts for municipalities. And unfortunately, sometimes the bills are moving so quickly that by the time we get the legislative bulletins and the time we have a council meeting, they don't really jive too well with timing. So sometimes we may have to, we're either behind or we're ahead. So with that, I'd like to talk about the first one that really is very worrisome to me and other cities and towns in the state, and that's the corporate income tax phase out, Senate Bill 1252. So you probably recall in the governor's State of the State address, one of his stated goals that he's had since he was first elected governor was to have a rollback or corporate income tax phase out. While that sounds good in theory, roughly 36% of our operating revenue comes from state shared revenues. And so this is going to have a huge impact on the town. Just looking at it, just with the analysis that the league has done, we're anticipating about $130,000 a year, and it's going to have a cumulative. Each year will be, first year will be 130, the next year will be 260, the next year after that will be 390, and the total reduction is about 600 million plus to the state, and then the share for cities and towns over that same period of time would be about 180 million, of which ours, if you took it over 10 years, would be about $1.3 million. So just think about what that does in terms of core services that the town provides. It has a huge impact on cities and towns, and that's, for us, we don't have a lot of diverse revenue sources, so we're really relying on our sales tax and state shared revenue. And then, David, was there anything I missed on the points that we talked about on that particular bill? We're really concerned because as we're going through our prepared budgets and trying to get ready for the retreat, it doesn't sound like a lot, but just if you think about like the home delivered meals, that's about $65,000 right there that we help shoulder that. Even though those folks are paying, that's something we have to budget for each year. Any increases that we have on the part of public safety each year, that compounded with losing revenue is like double. So, if you just imagine you have your costs go up and then you also are losing revenue, it has that kind of effect. So with that, I'd like to see if we can get a council position to at least have the consensus to oppose that, and then we will register that and get it into an official opposition to that. I'm open to hearing any discussion on that particular
Any comments on this Senate Bill 1252?
I totally oppose it. We'd be missing out on a lot of money.
Thank you. Councilwoman McMahon?
I oppose it too. I think that we should write a letter and make a stand on it. I think it is a significant reduction in funds, not only to just Fountain Hills, but to the state, and corporations should pay their fair share of tax.
Thank you. Any other input? Mike?
Grady, have you heard anything as far as how the legislators are approaching that or their reaction?
I've heard a couple different things. There's a little bit of infighting kind of going on because of various different things. I don't want to go into that detail. So the governor may or may not get his wish here because of some other things going on. So there's also the Republican majority now is only like 2 seats in each house, so it's not as wide of a majority that it's had in the past. Traditionally, and I'm not saying anything, making a political statement, but traditionally the Democrats have always been more or less a minority, have pretty much taken the side of the cities and towns on these types of issues, because a number of those folks have worked as elected officials in cities and towns. Some Republicans as well. But the point is, it's a very fragile majority that the Republicans have, and it just takes a few to get picked off on any of these bills to not to go the way the governor wants.
Well, was he just making the cuts on the state shared revenue side then, or was he cutting other state services, or how was that going to work?
I haven't heard exactly what's going on with that, but if this had to go through, it would be preferable, and they've done this in the past on some cuts before, where they would hold us harmless and have the state absorb those. They've done that in the past, like with DPS funding, where they used to just take the DPS funding off the top of the state shared revenue. And then when they decided to put in that public safety fee on the DMV registrations, then they kind of held us harmless on that. So there has to be an impact on the state as well. I mean, the state is going to have reductions to be able to absorb that kind of cut.
The state shared revenue is about 15%. So if it's $600 million cut, then it's 90 million or so on the shared revenue. So the rest of that is going to be absorbed by the agencies and whatever else.
There's also some legislators that would prefer, like, the property tax. The state gets a portion of the property tax, so they'd rather maybe do that. There's also been some talk that maybe it's just personal income tax as a whole. The good news is that yesterday was the deadline. Yesterday was the deadline for the Senate bills to have any new bills introduced. And then the deadline for the House is on Monday. So there will be no more bills coming from the Senate. And then after Monday, there will not be any more coming through the House. However, you always have to kind of be watching, because what they do sometimes is they'll have what's called an omnibus, and they'll just they'll do a strikeout provision, and they'll add things to a bill that's irrelevant to what they seek. So you're always having to stay on top of your toes for this. So it sounds to me, I'm not trying to get you to vote on this, but it sounds like there might be a consensus. So we'll go forward on that particular opposition to. The other thing that we're hearing is that with Senate Bill 1333, this is the law enforcement budgets, and this is a very interesting bill. The way it works is that this was in response, probably a delayed and probably almost a knee-jerk response to that whole movement that was happening last summer to the defund police or law enforcement. And so I think what this was trying to do is trying to ensure that law enforcement budgets wouldn't be reduced in cities and towns. And I'll be honest with you, I have not heard from any of our counterparts in other cities around the state, even those that might be a little bit more out there with some of the things that they do. I have not heard any city or town wanting to reduce their law enforcement budgets. But this bill, unfortunately, is a poison pill. So what I mean by that is the provision in this bill is that if you have a reduction in your law enforcement budget, and just keep in mind, right now, there's a review, for instance, with MCSO going on right now. Well, let's say that comes back and our rates for next year go down. Well, under this bill, they can withhold our state shared revenue if we have a reduction from the current year of our expenditures or what we have appropriated for law enforcement. To make that even worse, if there was a reduction in force, not saying that we'd ever do that because obviously they're not our employees, but as an example, let's just say we had our own police department if we had to, for whatever reasons, like let's say we had to make reductions across the board, and there might have been 1 or 2 police officers that had to lose their jobs because of budget or finance issues. Under this bill, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office would have to, at least they're being mandated, have to pick up and hire any of those that might have lost their jobs, and DPS. So I don't know how they can mandate that, but the scary part is that the state is trying to, through legislation, try to tell us how to do our budgeting, which I think is just, I think the intent was, I understand where they were coming from, but I think it's just not really necessary. And I don't know what's going to happen on this. We haven't heard, but there's a very good possibility that this will die in committee. With that, I'd like to just kind of see what the reaction is, and if I could find out if there's a consensus to put an active opposition on this one.
It's actually a bit ironic that in one hand, they're trying to control the way we spend our money, and in another hand, they're saying you can't decrease. Then in another hand, they're also saying, but at the same time, we want to issue these corporate tax cuts and take away some of your revenue. What did you say, 36% of the money that comes in? So the calls that I've been involved in, there's been nobody that's been about, I think there's 3 of those bills that have been proposed?
Yes.
Everybody has been against it from all the various cities and towns that I've been privy to.
Yeah, I think most cities, there's no city that I've heard that's obviously in favor of this. And I think the philosophy behind it, I think we can all understand that, because we all realize how important law enforcement is to our cities and towns to protect our residents. It's obviously the most important priority that the council has when they're setting their budgets each year. So it's just a really bad precedent, because you really don't want the legislature to kind of legislate how we set our budgets. Already under state law and under the Constitution, we're already required and mandated to have no deficit spending, and we have to have a balanced budget. So that's already there, and cities and towns are already complying with that.
A couple of the mayors mentioned that they had gotten grants. I mean, if you kind of think of the CARES Act, that would be like kind of insane, because that went to public safety, and then the next year you don't have it, so your budget went down. Or they bought police vehicles or other items. So those don't seem to be taken care of in this bill. So
I think it's I think that particular one, I think I'm seeing heads nodding. So we'll go ahead and we'll register in opposition to that one.
Does anybody on the phone, Dave, do you have anything to say about it?
As it relates to reducing the police?
No, just this bill. I mean, what this bill is doing, and are you okay with us opposing this bill?
Absolutely. I don't think we should reduce the police in any way whatsoever. You know that, Mayor.
Okay, this bill is basically saying, though, if we did in any city lower their budget for any reason at all, then the state would withhold funding from us. So, and there are several bills like that. So, I just want to make sure.
I'm in opposition to that.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that, Vice Mayor?
I said that I'm in opposition to that, of course.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So there's 2 bills there.
Did you want to go over the short-term rental?
I do. The short-term rental. So Representative Kavanaugh took up the reins on this bill that almost passed last year, but then everything got shut down. So this is HB 2481, and really like us to support this. If you are okay with that, it adds some things that we've really wanted this entire time. It decouples short-term from long-term. It also allows us to use our zoning ordinances in some way. I don't think, I think it's a reasonable way to do it. And the league is working on language with the Expedias and that Airbnbs and such to make it a little more palatable. But I'd love it if we could support that.
I kind of also feel like it puts it into our hands as local government.
Right.
Similar to the conversation we could have just had, local government needs to be in charge of local monies. Same with this kind of thing. If this is run at a different level that's not local government, then why are we even here? You know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And it's just, again, it's another preemption thing. Like they're, telling cities and towns, you can't ban plastic bags. You keep, we're going to punish you if you pass this bill and we don't like it. And, as far as, it's just, again, preempting the authority. Cities and towns should have to, like you said, regulate their own governance and budgets. And I just, they took away our ability to regulate some of these short-term rentals, a few years ago, and then here we go. That's, look what happened. So, yeah, totally in favor of supporting that. And again, it's just I don't understand these preemption things that we're having to deal with every year.
Well,
Thank you, that's
we're in
helpful.
good company this year. They are, so what we call it is a 1487. That's what they have used to question things that we do, that cities and towns and counties do, and then bring it over. And then one legislator can say to the AG, we don't like what they're doing, and we all know what that is. Well, there's now a bill to do that to the Corporation Commission, and make sure that they toe the line. There's also bills against county recorders handling elections, against secretaries of state handling elections. There's bills against the governor for having emergency proclamation rights, and there's one against the Board of Supervisors. So but almost every level of government, above or below the legislature, has a bill now to, so like we say, we're in good company, I guess. The short-term rental thing, this is I don't want to get into weeds on it, but there's another bill that the league is asking us to oppose, which is Senate Bill 1379, because it's a short-term rental bill that is not doing the things that we have been wishing for all this time. It doesn't, as I think he said, doesn't approach the crux of the situation. So it doesn't decouple short-term from long-term. And so they were asking us if we would oppose 1379, and then that makes a clear statement. The league bill is 2481, the Representative Kavanaugh bill is 2481, and we want to oppose the other one. So if you're okay with that too, and that was on the call also. Okay.
Also, I want to let you know, it sounds like some of you are aware of the calls, so if you'd like to, some of you, if you're not aware of the phone number, we'll send that off as a reminder that you can get in on that and you can listen to those. The legislative calls are every Monday at 10 a.m. and they're led by the legislative analyst and the executive director of the league. So I'll have Angela or myself email you all those, but it sounds like you guys are aware of that, so that's good.
Thank you, Grady. Do we have any cards on this? I didn't ask. Okay. So if we're done with that, we can move on to the council discussion direction to town manager. Anything? Yes, Councilman.
I'm wondering, I've read a lot of articles and heard a lot of stories about how successful the state of Arizona is in attracting businesses from states that are not business friendly. So I'm wondering if we can get an update from our economic development people as to what companies we've reached out to and where we're at with that process. And
that sounds like a good plan. So
That's a coincidence. We just talked about that, and so we're going to do it at the retreat.
Oh.
Okay? Great. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Good night.